The man was melting and casting gold bars. When he suddenly spotted a figure flashing across the surveillance footage, he immediately sped up his movements, cleaned up the scene and hid the gold bars as quickly as possible.
야, 지금 몇 시냐?
언제 오셨습니까?
After dismissing his subordinates, the man turned around and rushed into the bathroom. He pulled the gold bars out of his wig and stashed them in the wallet hidden in the ceiling. The next second, Detective Wu suddenly called him. It turned out that the man, Bangtae, was an informant working for Detective Wu, but he wasn't a police officer. Instead, he was a small-time thief whom Detective Wu had arrested before. Back then, to avoid going to jail, Bangtae had to give away the location of the telecom fraud den he knew. Later, the two worked together and successfully took down the fraud den, but Bangtae had his own ulterior motives. He secretly took all the money from the vault, while Detective Wu was chasing the fraudsters. After tasting the sweet rewards, Bangtae tipped Detective Wu off about the location of an underground casino. Then he pulled the same trick again. While Detective Wu was busy securing the scene, he pocketed all the money that the gamblers had no time to take away. After that, the two collaborated multiple times, and Bangtae amassed a huge sum of money. He then converted the cash into gold for easier storage. Now, Bangtae had infiltrated the smuggling ring, and was helping Detective Wu investigate them. There was barely any profit to be made from this mission in the first place. To make things worse, Detective Wu was planning to raid the smuggling ring's headquarters. Bangtae instantly lost his nerve. After hanging up the phone, he grabbed the wallet from the ceiling and climbed out of the bathroom window. But the next second, a rapid knock came at the door. An underling told Bangtae that the boss had ordered them to move out immediately. Bangtae quickly glanced downstairs. Sure enough, he spotted the boss's figure. He had no choice but to abandon his plan for the time being, put the wallet back in its original place, and then got into the boss's car with the underling. In the car, the boss told Bangtae that the organization's intelligence had been leaking frequently lately. He suspected there was a mole in the organization. With that said, he pulled out a police document and told Bangtae to read it out loud. Bangtae didn't panic at all, because even though he was a mole, he wasn't a police officer at all. But the police officer Duyun mentioned in the file was truly remarkable. He not only got a perfect score on the college entrance exam, but also ranked first in the police academy. He also held a 9th degree black belt in Hapkido, and a 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo. Faced with the boss's questioning, Bangtae immediately denied it flatly. The boss turned to look at the underling. Bangtae's heart skipped a beat instantly. He recalled all the strange behaviors of the underling before. He immediately realized that the underling was Duyun, the undercover cop, but the boss didn't believe him at all. He tried to grab Bangtae by the hair, but ended up pulling off his wig instead. This made the boss even more convinced that Bangtae was the undercover mole. Just then, Duyun suddenly let out a laugh, but before he could make a move, he was thrown out of the car by the agitated boss. A moment later, the boss took Bangtae out to sea by boat, and threw him overboard. After getting rid of this thorn in his side, the boss and his underlings returned to the dock, only to see Bangtae shaking hands warmly with a fisherman. It turned out that the fisherman had just saved Bangtae's life. Just as the boss was about to execute Bangtae on the spot, all the cars at the dock suddenly turned on their headlights. At the same time, Detective Wu simply couldn't get in touch with Bangtae. He even thought that Bangtae's identity had been exposed, so he kicked the door open, only to find no sign of Bangtae at all. He had no choice but to search the adjacent room. Sure enough, he found a suspicious box in room 308, but before Detective Wu could open the box, he was stopped by Jimmy, who had rushed over. Seeing that there were many underlings standing behind Jimmy, Detective Wu immediately backed down, but was still pinned down on the bed and beaten up. Jimmy interrogated Detective Wu, asking who had sent him here. Detective Wu had to say that he was a police officer, but Jimmy wasn't afraid of the police at all. After interrogating Detective Wu for a while, he let him go. Early the next morning, David, the gang leader, was arranging for his underlings to deliver money to various tycoons and politicians. But before he could finish speaking, one of the underlings spilled all the details about the tycoons and politicians. David picked up an iron rod and bludgeoned the underling to death. In his opinion, the more an underling knew, the more likely he was to become a security leak. David warned the other underlings, if they dared to call the police or contact the tycoons and politicians privately, he would definitely kill them all. With that said, David waved his hand. The underlings quickly carried the body and left the office. Just then, Jimmy suddenly called. David immediately asked him if he had found the account book. It turned out that a waitress had stolen David's account book a few days earlier. Realizing that someone was following her, she hid the account book. Then she ran away while contacting the police chief and informed him of the current situation. But the next second, Jimmy blocked the waitress in the alley with his underlings. The account book hasn't been found for the time being, but a policeman came to room 308 last night looking for something. Detective Wu said he was here to investigate the smugglers. But Jimmy didn't believe him at all. He let Detective Wu go on purpose, planning to set a long-term trap to catch the big fish. His underlings were now keeping 24-hour surveillance on Detective Wu. They would definitely find out who was behind all this. David instantly became alert, but for now, he had to deal with the problem of the holdout first. David told his underlings to trick the holdout out of the house first. The other underlings walked into the house carrying gasoline cans. A short while later, a violent explosion erupted in the holdout's house. It was at this point that the chief of police stepped out of the shadows. David told him about Detective Wu searching room 308. The chief was completely confused. He had no idea why Detective Wu had gone there either, and Detective Wu was just a nobody in the police station. The chief told David not to pay any attention to Detective Wu, but David had been around for years and would naturally not trust the chief easily. He was going to get rid of Detective Wu personally, and asked the chief to help clean up the mess afterward. Only then could the misunderstanding between them be resolved. Seeing that David was about to leave, the chief asked if he had a chance of being promoted to police commissioner this year.
애들 관리나 좀 잘 하셔.
After that, David called Jimmy, telling Jimmy to interrogate Detective Wu once more, to find out if he knew where the account book was. As soon as the chief returned to the police station, he immediately summoned his subordinates, telling the female police officer Su Young to find out exactly what Detective Wu had been up to lately. If things went smoothly, he would promote her to team leader. At the same time, Detective Wu found out Bang Tae's address through an acquaintance, but no one answered the door. No matter how many times he knocked, Detective Wu had to call a locksmith to pick the lock. Then he started rummaging through every drawer and cabinet, trying to find clues about Bang Tae's whereabouts, and as he pulled back the curtains, Detective Wu spotted the relationship chart drawn on the glass. Only then did he realize that Bang Tae had been using him all along. So he stopped looking for Bang Tae, grabbed the money in the room and walked out the door. Unexpectedly, a group of men in black blocked his way. Detective Wu threw the wallet downstairs and got through the corridor with his agile movements. Then he pulled out his gun to warn them, but the next second, he was knocked out by a stick from Jimmy behind him. After confirming that Detective Wu knew nothing about the account book, Jimmy immediately called David and told him the result of the interrogation. David told Jimmy to get rid of Detective Wu. Looking at the large amount of cash in the bag, Jimmy rubbed his hands excitedly. He told his men to dig a hole quickly, planning to bury Detective Wu alive. But when the burly man opened the trunk, Detective Wu knocked him out with one kick. Then he changed into the burly man's shoes and fled the dangerous place quickly, but he got lost and circled back here and was spotted by Jimmy by chance. Detective Wu took off running, while Jimmy chased after him with his men in a car, but the area was full of trees. Jimmy and the others couldn't drive faster than Detective Wu could run. In this way, Detective Wu was accidentally rescued by the police. The police rushed Detective Wu to the hospital. Luckily, Detective Wu wasn't seriously injured. He immediately told the insurance adjuster and the police that the gang was after him, but the adjuster and the police didn't believe him at all, because the dashcam hadn't captured any gang vehicles. The adjuster thought Detective Wu was mentally unstable, and started negotiating the specific compensation amount. Detective Wu was very annoyed, and wanted to go through the discharge procedures immediately. Just then, Su Young suddenly pushed the door open and walked in. It turned out that after learning Detective Wu had been hit by a police car, Su Young had rushed over right away. After dismissing the adjuster, Detective Wu took Su Young to a couple's restaurant for dinner, but before they could say a few words, he spotted Bang Tae's figure on the news. At this point, to get out of jail as soon as possible, Bang Tae told Do-yoon that he was Detective Wu's informant. He also said he had long known Do-yoon was a detective, but the latter didn't know that. But Do-yoon said he had known all along, that Bang Tae had hidden gold bars in the bathroom ceiling. How could he possibly believe Bang Tae's nonsense? Helpless, Bang Tae had to pull the same trick again, claiming he could help Do-yoon catch a much bigger gang. But this trick was completely useless on Do-yoon. It was at this point that Bang Tae spotted Detective Wu's figure. After arriving at the interrogation room, Bang Tae recounted the whole sequence of events, but what he was curious about was why Detective Wu had suddenly decided to arrest the smugglers. Detective Wu quickly kicked Bang Tae, signaling him to shut up. Bang Tae instantly got the hint, but Su Young had already figured out the whole story. In other words, Detective Wu had accidentally broken into room 308, while in the process of arresting the smugglers, and then he was tracked down and kidnapped by the people from room 308. Bang Tae immediately pretended to know the inside story but held back, not speaking directly. Instead, he asked Detective Wu if he would be let go. Detective Wu immediately flew into a rage, saying he had been to Bangtae's house, and found out that Bangtae had been using him all along. Bangtae was about to explain when Soo-young suddenly cut in and said, as long as Bangtae spilled the information about room 308, she would get Bangtae out of the police station. Ignoring Detective Wu's attempts to stop him, Bangtae told everything he knew. He had once gone to the people in room 308 over a parking issue, but when he saw a burly man open the door, Bangtae immediately backed down but still snuck a glance inside the room. It might have been an illegal casino or a telecom fraud den. In any case, it was no legitimate business. Besides, when Bangtae was hiding the gold bars, he heard a woman scream coming from room 308. In order to get more information, Soo-young and Detective Wu took Bangtae back to room 305 and started checking the surveillance footage on Bangtae's computer. Detective Wu spotted the box he had seen in room 308 at a glance. Bangtae speculated that the box might contain the body of the woman who had screamed, but with that said, he put the computer away, telling Detective Wu to return that bag of money to him first. Detective Wu pulled Bangtae aside and told him the news that the wallet had been taken by Jimmy. If Bangtae wanted to get his money back, he had to cooperate with Detective Wu to catch Jimmy and his gang. Helpless, Bangtae agreed, and then returned to the apartment with Detective Wu, only to find that the place had been turned upside down. Frustrated and flustered, Detective Wu accused Bangtae of daring to secretly take the dirty money, but Bangtae said that informants always met tragic ends. Once something went wrong, the police would make the informant take the blame. How could he possibly fail to keep an ace up his sleeve? Then he asked about the relationship between Detective Wu and Soo-young. Detective Wu had nothing to hide. Previously, in order to collect evidence of the gang's crimes, Detective Wu had disguised himself as a drug lord to make a deal with the gang, only to find a particularly beautiful woman among the gang members, and that woman was none other than Soo-young, who was working undercover. Detective Wu took a liking to her at first sight and started drinking with Soo-young, but the two of them drank too much and both blew their covers. Soo-young got into a scuffle with the gang members, but Detective Wu only made things worse. In the end, both of their missions ended in failure. Now Soo-young suddenly received a call from the chief and immediately began to report the situation. Detective Wu's informant Bangtae deduced that the criminals in room 308 had killed a woman and then put the body in a box. They were currently collecting clues at Bangtae's home. The chief told Soo-young to keep monitoring, but after hanging up the phone, he immediately met with David. David had originally promised the chief that they would discuss the promotion in detail tonight, but David said he had drunk too much and suggested they talk next time. With that said, he ignored the chief's attempts to stop him and walked into a private room nearby. Early the next morning, Detective Wu was woken up by a slap from Bangtae, only to find the police team leader standing beside him. The team leader ignored Detective Wu. He asked Bangtae what crimes he had uncovered against David. Bangtae looked completely blank. Detective Wu was equally confused. The team leader's already thin patience was worn completely thin. He sneered at both Detective Wu and Soo-young, then he immediately tried to take Bangtae away. Detective Wu didn't care about being insulted himself, but he couldn't stand the team leader humiliating Soo-young, so he kicked the team leader away and grabbed a spatula to fight with the other police officers. The officers immediately drew their guns. Bangtae took advantage of the chaos to climb out the window and escape. Detective Wu followed right after him, but he never expected that Bangtae had only jumped onto the overpass nearby. Bangtae hurried downstairs and led Detective Wu to keep running. The team leader quickly led his men in pursuit, but eventually lost their trail. After Bangtae led Detective Wu to a relatively safe place, he started a new round of analysis. He suspected that Soo-young had approached Detective Wu on purpose. Her goal was to pump him for information. Upon hearing this, Detective Wu burst into tears immediately. He couldn't accept the fact that Soo-young had been using him. After seeing that he had calmed down a bit, Bangtae told Detective Wu that the team leader had mentioned David's name earlier that day. He knew David had a nickname called Road to the Underworld, because anyone who crossed him would end up dead for sure. But no sooner had he finished speaking than Soo-young called Detective Wu. Ignoring Bangtae's attempts to stop him, Detective Wu answered the phone. Soo-young hastily apologized to Detective Wu. She had no idea how things had turned out this way. She had only reported the matter to the chief. Then the team leader had immediately led his men to Bangtae's apartment. Detective Wu instantly realized that the chief was involved in something fishy. He told Soo-young to be very careful and contact him again, only after changing her SIM card. After Detective Wu hung up the phone, Bangtae warned him once again to be wary of Soo-young, but as soon as Bangtae turned around, Detective Wu rushed out like a man possessed. It turned out that he had received a text message from Soo-young. Meanwhile, Bangtae finally realized that the people in room 308 might be connected to David. 10 minutes later, one of the team leader's officers told Soo-young Detective Wu had sent a text saying he was coming to see her alone. Just then, Detective Wu knocked on the door. Soo-young told the team leader and the others to hide quickly, while she figured out a way to send Detective Woo away. Soo-young held the door shut to keep Detective Woo out, while asking where Bangtae was.
그놈 말이 이 형사가 김팀 그 자식 정보원 짓을 하고 있다는 거야. 그게 말이 돼?
With that said, Detective Woo forced his way into Soo-young's apartment. To prevent Detective Woo from discovering the hidden officers, Soo-young hastily drew the curtains and turned off the lights. In her panic, she even grabbed Detective Woo's hand and hugged him. Detective Woo thought Soo-young had feelings for him and leaned in, but the next second, he got slapped. Soo-young asked again about Bangtae's whereabouts. Detective Woo said that despite Bangtae's laid-back and irresponsible appearance, he was definitely working his guts out to gather intelligence right now. And sure enough, as Detective Woo had guessed, at this very point, Bangtae was disguised as a Japanese chef and secretly following David. The next day, Bangtae even disguised himself as a thug, and followed David and his entourage around to inspect real estate projects. At this point, a group of residents, whose houses had been illegally demolished by David's men, gathered to protest with signs. David told his secretary to take the inspection team elsewhere first, then waved his hand. The thugs immediately took off their shirts, ready to attack. Bangtae, who was mixed in with them, couldn't stand by and watch. He hurried forward, trying to get the residents to back down, but the elderly woman leading the protest thought he was provoking them and headbutted him. Then the residents ganged up on Bangtae and started beating him up. Later that night, Detective Woo still hadn't heard from Bangtae. Soo-young thought something had happened to Bangtae, but Detective Woo told her not to worry. That guy Bangtae valued his life more than anyone else. Soo-young asked Detective Woo the reason he was investigating the smugglers alone. Detective Woo admitted that ever since the last mission failed, he hadn't only been demoted, but also become the laughingstock of his colleagues. Soo-young had also been disciplined because of him. Detective Woo had originally planned to catch the smugglers, extort some money from them, and then resign, but he never imagined things would escalate to this point. On the other side, Jimmy realized the police were investigating David, so he went to see David and said he didn't want to clash head-on with the police. David gave him a large sum of money, telling Jimmy to find a safe place to lay low first. By a coincidence, Jimmy ran into Bangtae while on the run. He knocked Bangtae unconscious and brought him before David. David thought the chief had betrayed him, and that Bangtae was the chief's informant, so he ordered his men to kill Bangtae. That way the chief would realize he had made a mistake. Upon hearing this, Bangtae begged for mercy, crying and saying hysterically he was just an ordinary person being used, not a cop. If he didn't agree to the police's demands, he would be tortured mercilessly.
그래서 더더욱 살려둘 수가 없는 거야. 나도 정보원 짓 해서 이 자리까지 올라왔으니까.
Seeing David pull out a gun, Bangtae begged David to give him one more chance.
내가 잡새 하나 잘못 만나서 이렇게 가렸구나.
This sentence reminded David of the past. He agreed to Bangtae's plea, and told him to lure Detective Woo to a certain location. 5 minutes later, Bangtae called Detective Woo, saying he had found a woman's dead body. Detective Woo immediately informed Soo-young of this news. Soo-young hurried to the factory by car, but as soon as Detective Woo got out of the car, he was pinned down by the team leader's officers. Only then did Detective Woo realize that everything Bangtae had deduced was correct. The team leader immediately called the chief to report the situation. After locking Detective Woo in the car, he and the officers began to search and advance into the factory building. What they didn't expect was that Detective Woo had kept an ace up his sleeve this time too. He hadn't only secretly hidden the key to his handcuffs, but also knew that the information Bangtae had given him was fake. Not far away, Jimmy watched as the police closed in on the factory building, and told his men to get rid of Bangtae in the car as well. The quick-witted Bangtae knocked the burly man out with one kick, and quickly fled the dangerous place. At this moment, the team leader and the others had already sneaked into the factory. After a search, they found the box that Detective Woo had seen before. But the team leader and the officers went crazy, and ran out of the factory building after seeing what was inside. Detective Woo panicked instantly when he saw this scene. He thought Soo-young was in danger. In his anxiety, Detective Woo rushed into the factory building, without even hearing Bangtae's voice. As soon as he saw Soo-young's figure, he rushed toward her immediately, but in the end, he was rescued by Soo-young. Soo-young carried Detective Woo and checked into an hourly motel room. Detective Woo drank some water and his consciousness gradually came back. He told Soo-young that he had actually spotted the team leader and the others when he was at her place. The reason he had given Soo-young false information was to confirm Bangtae's suspicions about her. He just never imagined things would be this serious. With that said, Detective Woo started to play dead. As soon as Soo-young hugged him, he quickly hugged her back. Soo-young pushed him away and began to analyze the ins and outs of the incident. The chief had sent the team leader to keep an eye on Detective Woo. because Detective Wu was investigating the woman in room 308, and judging from the current situation, David must be connected to room 308, and he had been looking for an account book all along. In other words, the woman in room 308 was connected to the account book. Detective Wu suddenly remembered that Jimmy had once asked him about the whereabouts of the account book. It seemed that the woman had been caught by David's men while trying to steal the account book, and judging by how concerned the chief was about this matter, the woman was most likely the chief's informant. Just then, the team leader suddenly called. Detective Wu suggested that Su Young answer the call first. Right now, the team leader had no idea that Su Young was with Detective Wu. Only by acting together with the team leader would they have a chance to find out the truth. After answering the phone, Su Young lied and said that when she woke up, she was already in the hourly motel room. At this point, the chief led his men to arrest David, but the very next second, he received a call from the team leader. Upon learning that the information was fake, the chief flew into a rage, but David laughed loudly and slowly approached him. Only then did the chief realize that he had been tricked by David, but both of them were very cunning. As long as there was no mortal enmity between them, they could sit down and negotiate terms. David told the chief that the account book contained all the transaction records between him and the tycoons and politicians. He was practically being driven to his death by the tycoons because of the missing account book. All of this was the fault of the chief's informant, Juhi. But the chief said that David had never taken his promotion seriously. Then he asked about Juhi's whereabouts. Surely David hadn't really killed her.
미쳤어? 내가 왜 내 손에 피를 묻혀?
This was exactly the answer the chief was hoping for. David hadn't killed Juhi, which meant he hadn't gotten the whereabouts of the account book out of Juhi yet. David forced down his anger and proposed a win-win solution. First, the chief was to lead his officers to rescue Juhi. David would cooperate with him and put on a show of being raided by the police. Then the chief was to extract the location of the account book from Juhi. Finally, he would kill Juhi with Detective Wu's gun and frame Detective Wu as the murderer. Once David retrieved the account book, he would plead with the political bigwigs to get the chief promoted to police commissioner. The chief thought for a moment and agreed to David's proposal. Half an hour later, the team leader received the chief's order. First, he went to the hourly motel room to pick up Detective Wu and Su Young. Then they headed straight for the crime scene, heard someone died there, and Detective Wu's pistol was found too. Detective Wu ignored the team leader, and instead took the handcuff key from Su Young. At the exact same moment, Jimmy was packing his things and getting ready to flee, but David suddenly called him, asking him to help him one last time. David would give Jimmy a huge sum of money after it was done. Only then did Jimmy reluctantly agree. After hanging up the phone, he carefully put his wallet into the locker. Then he headed out to make preparations. Only then did Bangtae, who had been hiding in the shadows, emerge, retrieving his own wallet from the locker. He had planned to take the bag and leave the factory, but he saw the burly man pushing a box, and inside the box was a woman with her face covered. Outside the factory, David and the chief, each with their own men, walked into the factory under Jimmy's lead. Su Young had tried to free Detective Wu, but was caught by David's men. Luckily, Bangtae had bribed the burly man with money in advance, which allowed them to successfully rescue Detective Wu and Su Young. Upon learning that the woman was still alive, Detective Wu and Su Young sprang into action at once. By this time, the chief and his men had already entered the factory interior, but both the chief and David were plotting to eliminate each other. After getting their hands on the account book, learning that Juhi was in the room right in front of them, the chief had intended to act according to the plan, but the next second, the box that had been used to hold the informant was suddenly pushed out. Everyone froze in shock, and this was exactly the doing of Detective Wu and the other two. In fact, Juhi inside the box had already been rescued. The moment Bangtae lifted Juhi's hood, he fell in love with the woman in front of him. But the atmosphere outside was very tense. The team leader reminded the chief that the box they and the officers had encountered earlier contained a bomb. This box might have one too. David quickly tried to explain. Jimmy had no idea what was going on either. The chief panicked, and as soon as he saw Jimmy approaching, he fired his gun immediately. Detective Wu and the others hiding nearby let out exclamations. In an instant, David took the opportunity to shoot and hit the chief. The two sides immediately engaged in a fierce shootout. Detective Wu and the others fled to the second floor. He told Su Young to take Bangtae and Juhi and evacuate first. He would stay behind to hold off the pursuing enemies. Upon hearing this, Su Young sprang into action at once. But facing the aggressive thugs, Detective Wu was beaten until his face was covered in blood. After just one encounter, then he was kicked over the railing amid the thug siege, and fell to the first floor. Bangtae asked Su Young if they should go back to help. Su Young told him not to worry, that Bangtae's frail appearance was all an act. He was actually the most skilled fighter in the police force. Bangtae had been demoted not because of a mission failure, but because of excessive use of force that left a gang leader disabled. Bangtae struggled to climb back to the second floor, took a stick to the body from a thug and walked away unscathed. he punched the thug flying and then went on a rampage. He took down more than half of the thugs, in less than half a minute, then he grabbed an iron chain and finished off the fight, but in the end, Soo-young and the other two were targeted by the remaining thugs. To cover Joohee and Bongtae's retreat, Soo-young was knocked out by a punch from a thug, but it wasn't long before Bongtae and Joohee were also cornered in the tool room. Bongtae grabbed a sledgehammer nearby and threw it at the thugs. The thugs refused to back down. After a fierce fight using workshop tools, Bongtae had his foot hit by an anvil wielded by Joohee. The two of them were dragged by the thugs and brought before David. By this time, David had already taken control of Soo-young, the chief, and the rest of their group. The chief claimed that everything that had just happened was a misunderstanding, only to be slapped hard across the face by David.
다 끝났어. 장부는 어딨어?
네?
Seeing that Joohee refused to say a word, David pressed a gun against Bongtae's head. Soo-young shouted a warning to Joohee, telling her not to speak. Once she talked, everyone would die. In the nick of time, Detective Woo arrived just in time, but he was being escorted by the thugs. It turned out that Detective Woo was finally outnumbered, and had been captured by the thugs. David immediately raised his gun, ready to kill the root cause of all this trouble. If it weren't for Detective Woo, none of this would have happened. Just then, Do-yoon suddenly kicked the door open and walked in. Bongtae laughed and cursed at him for being so late. It turned out that before sneaking into the factory, Bongtae had already given the factory address to Do-yoon, but the surrounding terrain was far too complicated. Luckily, Do-yoon ran into the burly man who was fleeing with the wallet. Only then did he figure out the exact location of the factory. At Do-yoon's command, the accompanying police officers immediately rushed into the factory. Meanwhile, Detective Woo took off running to chase David. Jimmy saw that the situation was turning bad. He hurried back to the room to grab the wallet from the locker and escape, only to find that the wallet had vanished without a trace. He thought David was playing a trick on him, so he drove over to pick up David, and threatened him with a knife to hand over the money. He didn't expect David to have a gun on him too. As the two were locked in a standoff, Detective Woo suddenly appeared. He jumped onto the windshield, forcing Jimmy to stop the car. Jimmy had no choice but to swerve sharply, but the car flipped over due to the excessive speed. In the end, Detective Woo successfully arrested both Jimmy and David. With Joohee's help, Do-yoon's officers successfully found the account book. The chief was also taken away by the police for investigation. Everything finally settled down. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Bongtae picked up his wallet and left with Joohee. Soo-young and Detective Woo also buried the hatchet. A few months later, Detective Woo officially confessed his feelings to Soo-young, but Soo-young just called him a fool.
조태봉 아니야?
The movie ends here. The Informant is a newly released crime comedy. The film's comedic tension and suspenseful plot complement each other perfectly, from hiding gold in a wig, to the gang mistakenly identifying an undercover agent. Scenes like Detective Woo's clumsy pursuit of criminals are packed with laughs. Meanwhile, clues like the missing account book and the mole inside the police station unfold layer by layer, filling the cat-and-mouse game between cops and gangsters, with twists and turns, and depicting a complex web of interests between the police and the underworld. We recommend this film to all viewers who enjoy this genre. So that's the end of today's commentary. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.